Well, hello, community, creatives, and con folks out there. Today is Thursday. We are into third pillar Thursday of our urban exploration. I am DBJ, your host. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. And this week we've had the theme of urban exploration and urban planning, urban cities, and using urban NPCs in the whole nine yards. But today we're going to talk third pillar Thursday. And third pillar Thursday, what is third pillar? The third pillar of gaming is exploration, with the first and second pillar being combat and social interactions. And in my estimation, exploration is not just discovering new and hidden secrets, which is definitely a thing, especially if we're talking urban environments, secret doors, hidden passages, those kind of things, but also using the environment and making the environment just as dynamic as the enemies you fight, and the tongue twisting that goes on in social interactions. So we're going to bring up a bunch of things, but I wanted to, because this is an entire week that we're going into, I did want to bring up something about the NPCs, because we really touched on that quite a bit the past couple of days, but I just wanted to end note it, shoehorn this in, I guess. And that would be the idea that making NPCs, don't stress yourself out with a ton of NPCs that all need to be fleshed out with deep and dark backgrounds. Especially in an urban environment, you're going to have a ton of NPCs, and this is an opportunity to let your players shine. So I would absolutely suggest having some throwaway NPCs. Have them be idiots, inconsiderate, rude, just plain vile, nincompoops, just people who are incapable of doing the thing that they're supposed to do beyond their particular skill or venue. Basically throwaways, crunchies. Allow your players to, this is an ability to allow your players to shine. It's the detective that's bored or inconsiderate. It's the medical staff that doesn't know what they're doing. It's the criminal contact that always seems to be to fumble things and to get arrested or draw attention to themselves. So having a bunch of NPCs around that you can throw away and throw at your players, to let your players shine, to show their skills, to slap them around, and to even confound some of the things that they want to do. So if you have a medieval society and a player wants that special sword made by the blacksmith, and you really don't have anything to create, put some tension in there. Have the blacksmith be an expert, but every time the player goes to see the blacksmith, there's like an orphan child the blacksmith is teaching, but he also backhands the kid across the mouth every time the kid speaks up. And it's like the perfect opportunity for the player to go, okay, do I want that magic sword made for me, or do I want to, kick this dude's ass? And, because I'm about to punch him in the throat if he smacks that kid again, right? So you could have NPCs that basically deserve to die, right? Not, of course, not, well, literally, and then not literally, meaning, the ineffective mayor of a small town that, always speaks up and speaks against the players. You can always have those kinds of individuals in your town. There we go. Okay, I was like, "What's this? Is the chat working?" Yeah. Hey, Vince, what's going on? I hope you are absolutely feeling better. Maybe join me next week. But yeah, have some throwaway NPCs. Okay, let's get into third pillar Thursday. Urban cities. All right, so we're going to divide this up into basically four groupings. Your basic tropes, and there's nothing wrong with using tropes. I think they're great. It's just a matter of tropes are tropes are an excellent way to get your players to buy into what you're trying to sell them without needing a lot of a lot of salesmanship on your part. Yeah, Vin says, yeah, better yesterday, still coughing though. Ugh, yeah, that sucks, man. Um, Illness and stress really reduces intellectual bandwidth, man. It's a killer. So anyway, so the four tropes I'm talking about are um, the underworld, meaning like not necessarily criminal underworld, but I'm talking sewer systems, the places underground, dark alleys, basements, that kind of thing, dungeons, in the truest sense. Um, the second one would be literal dark alleys, the streets, the back ways, the hidden passages, the marketplace that has, if you go past the tapestries or tents, there are areas in the back, the dark portions of the city. The third portion would be the streets themselves, exploring the streets, street level, running up and down streets, even if it's modern day driving cars, public areas, parks, that kind of thing, storefronts, people's homes. And then lastly would be rooftop running, rooftops, spires, climbing walls, the upper reaches. So let's go into the sewer systems and things that you can do. Now, the classic one is the rounded sewer with like the dark, murky water, maybe no more than a foot wide or so, maybe 2 feet wide, that flows down the middle, and the players maybe have to duck their heads using arcane light or flashlights, or even night vision goggles, or in a more of a medieval sense, they've got dark vision, maybe torches or lanterns, and they're walking along. But you can still have fun with that, right? First of all, I think something that we underplay is the horror of being in the dark, even with dark vision. With a lantern or a torch or dark vision, it only extends so many feet ahead. So a 100-foot tunnel can't be standing at one end of a 100-foot tunnel. Using 5th edition means you can only see maybe 30 feet with a torch or 60 feet with dark vision. You don't know how long it extends, so that your only senses might be things like what you can smell or hear, and scent might be cut off too, especially if someone has like a hunting dog or whatever, that you only smell like the what's somewhat underplayed as the foulness of being in a sewer system, whether it's like waste, feces, mold, fungus, just all the waste that's washed down there by rain. But we can have even more fun with that. We can play with the idea of having it being confusing and having passages that go left and right. And do you split up the party? I know that's wrong, but there's videos about splitting the party we've done before. But yeah, you could have do you go left or right because there's an equal chance? Do you have sounds echoing and making things difficult to navigate? There's also the idea of the iron bars, rusted iron bars that block a passageway. You can have elevations where people have to climb vertically upwards or downwards, especially if you have enemies in a sewer that don't need to walk. I'm talking about Jew beholders, where you have to, climb up and down, and the PCs have to go down a 100-foot shaft. They can only see 60 feet down. And Vince, of course, brings up the sewer crocodiles and flooding of the sewers. The idea of flooding of the sewers, I think, is is a tension generator, right? It's we tend not to be trained to use timers, but timers are great. It's the bumping up against the iron grate and the sewer starts to flood, and in 10 rounds it'll flood and you'll be completely underwater in dark urine and infested waters with the sewer crocodile coming after you. Who gets to break the grate, right? And how important is it? The one player that dishes out a bunch of damage is like, I'll go after the crocodiles, but someone might say, all right, barbarian, go ahead and break the bars instead, because the rest of us are going to die, right? That kind of thing. Dead Man Storyteller says, if you really must split the party, it is better to split the party vertically or horizontally. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Whether it's splitting them by distance or with a blade, right? Yeah. So yeah, yeah, no, I get your dry humor there, dead man. I don't know if anybody else gets it, but yeah, exactly. Like you can have um things compound the player's exploration by having things done while they're in the middle of exploring, which could be it's the hey, I'm going to rappel down the rope, and you have two players at the bottom of a pit, one person scaling down in the middle of it, one person holding the rope, and then another person lookout, and then the fight happens, right? So you've got the sewer crocodile. Does the sewer crocodile attack the person holding the rope? Do they get attacked by the sewer crocodile at the bottom of the pit? Do the players at above or in the middle of climbing down? What do they do? So you can confound some of those things, especially using like the flooding, the fact that the players may have to navigate through waist deep water that they can't see through and having something touch their leg. I'm talking about you, Star Wars, right? It's that kind of thing where the danger, it's not just the danger of the animal or the creature or the monster, it's the danger of where it takes place at, right? It's not just the crocodile that's and I know we're just talking about crocodile, it could be anything down in the sewer, but it's not the crocodile or the tentacle that grabs you, it's the fact that it grabs your ankle and you're in waist deep water that you can't penetrate even with bright light or something, and there's a chance of drowning, and there's nothing to grab onto, and once you get snatched away, no one can see you. And yeah, Atiugs, oh man, yeah, exactly, dead man. Vin says, I once had a group of resistance inside the sewers, and when the royals found out, they flooded the sewers to destroy their improvised canoes. Also, the smell could be nauseating after a while, and also like a -10 of social situations afterwards. We tend to forget that part. Hey, I'm talking about you, Star Wars. Like, there is no such thing as pulling a simple towel and wiping yourself off after being down in the sewer, right? I don't care how high your charisma is. The smell is just like, whoa, you're gonna need to take a hose and wash out that plate mail armor, paladin. Yeah, I'm talking about you. Right? But Atiugs are another thing down in the sewer system too. And the thing is, what's down there might be useful. All of those yeah, smells like a wet Wookiee. Tesla. But Dead Man brings up a point, like the Atiugs, even though he's like, oh, they might be enemies, maybe the city wants them down there. Maybe all those black puddings and gray oozes and all that stuff gets rid of waste. And there could be, I don't know, goblin pudding tenders, right? Poking them and prodding them so that they get rid of all the waste in this big giant city you have above. And it could lead to other things when the players kill off like the 3 Atiugs that they fought down there, or climbing down the pit. And then all of a sudden, like, the floodwaters go away, and you find out there's this thing is drinking the floodwaters, and oh, is that a living foot? Let me grab a piece of that too. And later on, the PCs may have affected the city long term, 3 sessions later, what have you. But yeah, the flooding, the idea of drowning, the idea that you cannot see, I think should be a big deal. The penalties to trying to tread water in chainmail and plate mail, having a floodwater where it's not just flooding vertically, dead man, but flooding horizontally. So floodwaters could push. Let's say the PCs are fighting, I don't know, the troglodytes that are down in the sewer, and then maybe one of the PCs or a bad guy, or maybe just a simple matter of how the sewer system works. All of a sudden, everyone hears this. It sounds like thunder, and then this big rush of water comes around the corner and knocks everyone down. And so everyone's got to make like strength rolls or balance checks or dex rolls or hold on to something. And you could create something like, okay, if you fail your roll, you're going to get dragged 60 feet down the hallway for every time you fail. In the beginning of the round, everyone's got to make a roll or they just get dragged away. And you could even add in like opportunity attacks or get rid of opportunity attacks, whichever way stuff. Yeah, Vince says, it says the gases that are created, a constant fire hazard. All right, Pyromancer. Yeah. you better pull out your dagger or your hand crossbow today. Yeah, no way to use a lantern or torch, or boom, being knocked unconscious, being blinded, like almost like a tear gas, people tearing away or choking. There could be a choking hazard. Breathe that stuff in too much, maybe someone passes out, or you get exhaustion levels, or you lose your endurance, or your constitution starts to go down, or your strength. Yeah, Ozalis says, just be careful of those tentacles. Yeah, I'm talking about you, Star Wars, right? Someone gets dragged underwater, and Nephrite brings up, and the rat swarms as well. Disease is a possibility too. You could say, well, listen, if you get cut or bit or pierced, there's a chance you might become infected by something. So you got to watch out for friends. Dante says, friends don't let friends cast fireball and methane. Yeah, just pat the pyromancer in the back and go, yeah, you're going to have to take a back seat this time, which isn't a bad thing, right? We talked about this before, about using the environment, right? Like, I know some players are going to balk at the idea, like, oh, my pyromancer's useless. Fold arms, table flip, pouty lip or whatever. But the thing is that maybe the last 3 encounters they dominated, and this one they just don't. Let somebody else take the reins, for example. Although it would be funny to have the pyromancer do something and then like flash the scene to the surface world, and all the pothole covers or the sewer grates like belch out flame or something, or that would be kind of crazy. Or maybe a player casts like stinking cloud, and everything that lives down there is just like, that doesn't affect us. We live in feces and sewer. Like, no. Yeah, giant rat swarms. Asala says, or if it's a desert city, swarms of flesh-eating scarabs, a la the Mummy. Yep. Dante says that electricity magic suddenly becomes interesting. Ice too. Ooh. That's, hey, you could, and I understand that altering rules sometimes throws people off, but you could very easily say, okay, my shocking grasp or my lightning bolt spell, what is the equivalent fire spell related to it, right? So here's what I mean. Shocking grasp, you got to touch somebody to make it go off, but if they put their hand in the water, maybe it's like, let's just change it to a ranged attack, like a burning hands. Or my lightning bolt instead becomes basically a fireball, as everyone that's in the water is affected by it. So you could just do a level equivalency if you need to adjudicate something. I think that would be cool. Even an ice spell, right? An ice spell, someone casts an ice spell, but it makes it slippery after they do it, or freezes people in place, so it might operate like a hold person spell or a grease spell where it becomes real slippery. But anyway, I'm going into adjudicating territory. As Alice says, that's when Pathfinders, there's a feat for that comes into play. Yeah, sometimes you really don't need rules for stuff like that. Sometimes you just need to have enough trust amongst each other and not crush people's ideas and just go, well, there's no rule for it, so it doesn't happen. Instead, to allow those crazy and wild things to happen, and then just let it go. I can't sing the rest of it because YouTube's going to pop me for that. Okay, so we've got our sewer system, we've got our massive floods, we've got our things that live down in underground. We could even substitute vision, like dark vision or whatever, for like sonar or scent for some of our creatures, so we can just blind them and have them blind, but they operate by sound or like sonar or something like that. Yeah, well, electricity can start fires as well, which might be a tension generator itself, right? Someone zaps someone in the water, and then all of a sudden you see like blue flames like licking the surface of the water, and everyone's like sniffing, like, uh-oh, we better get the hell up out of here. And it's like, yeah, you got 2 rounds to get the hell out, or boom, right? Vince says, go away with your logic, dead man. But a comedy of errors isn't a bad thing, right? It's not just that it's not just using that, but using that to ramp up the tension. All right, so we've gotten our little hand towels. We come out of the sewer, but we are going to walk the back alleys, right? We're going to walk the streets in our city, and that's a great way to have, because we're going to go into Assassin's Creed in a little bit here, but before we get there, we're going to walk the streets. So what can we do with the streets? Well, of course we have ourselves the typical crowds of people. So if it's during the day, it's navigating through crowds. So you can have the physical idea of going through crowds, right? Where strength and agility might be the thing to maneuver through a crowd. Excuse me, pardon me, excuse me. Somebody strong could just push their way through people, knocking people over. Someone very charismatic could maneuver their way through a number of people without getting them upset. Whereas maybe if the PCs are being chased by individuals, the people that are chasing them might be just rude and knocking people over, and everyone's getting upset. But there's more than just the crowds, right? Because crowds can be basically difficult terrain. Yeah, I know that's the go-to, right? But you can have even further things. For example, maybe the more you fail in trying to navigate through a crowd, the more the crowd closes in around you. So being rude and being the barbarian and punching people in the face might not be the good thing if people start getting pissed off and like you're going to push me? I'm not getting out of your way. F you, right? That could be a possibility. But there are crowds operate in another function. Crowds offer cover. So a crowd could make cover for like stealth attempts. Someone, Jason Bourne, running through a crowd and grabbing a scarf to wrap around their head, or a T-shirt, or changing their clothes, or snatching an apple, pickpocketing someone. Crowds could actually cover for that, as well as the fact that here we go with the pyromancer. Someone decides to zap an enemy or zap someone in a crowd. The crowd could actually literally be game system cover, that the cover is temporary, because instead of your arrow hitting someone in the chest, maybe it goes through somebody's throat instead, right? And then you have the moral issue. There's people in a park and they're listening to the theater or music or something, or they're watching a juggler, and the enemy tries to sneak their way through the crowd. Maybe there's like a evil halfling pickpocketed the paladin, and then someone's like, "Hey, get that halfling in the crowd." And someone's like, "Hey, I've got a fireball. That should be easy." Is it really cool to cast a fireball while the parents have their kids playing with dolls while they're listening to the puppeteer or something like that? I mean, it's crazy, right? So you could absolutely have those again, creating conflict and obstacles in the way of the players to do what they want to do, whether they're running from or running after, or having like a chase through a crowd or whatnot. As Olive says, if it's a warrior culture, barbarian pushes someone and suddenly he has a crowd of people trying to stab him. Yeah, it's the challenge, right? What, you push me, I'm gonna push you back, right? And therefore, he says low charisma as a person who gets pushed down a lot, not just unlikable, just treat it like unimportant. Exactly, right? Someone with low charisma doesn't necessarily have to be technically rude or ugly. It could just be people just treat them like, I'm not moving out of your, like almost like they don't exist, right? I'm not moving out of your way. And like you said, they just get pushed around a lot. They have a punchable face. Dante says, I consider them a hazard for trips and disarms. The crowd attempts a combat maneuver or something every few rounds. The mob can be a swarm type monster for adjudication. Exactly. I mean, you could, depending on the type of crowd, right? Let's say it's like the underworld. Maybe it's a city of thieves and people are out for themselves. Players run through the crowd, and it could be, you could make up a little random list, like maybe someone gets pickpocketed or tripped, like you said, or disarmed or held in place, right? Or even stabbed or punched in the face or something, while somebody else tries to pickpocket them. And it could be, if you're in a den of thieves, that could be a possibility that happens to you, right? Instead of an attack roll, if you were successfully attacked, maybe something goes missing in your backpack, or your cloak gets snatched off, or that dagger you held in your boot, gets taken by a small child who passes it off to another small child who throws it over a fence, right? That kind of thing. Nephrite said, I had a thief throw a blade to kill someone in a crowd to impress a client, fail critically. So I said they hit the wrong person and killed them dead. Immediate crowd reaction of total shock. And mad chase. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and what I'm talking about is having fun with it, meta wise, right? The situation might be very dire or serious, or it might be a very gritty setting, but I'm talking about with us gathered together, it's like, have fun with that. And so what, the PCs, I'm sure they're going to be PCs who are murder hobos, but let them do it and then let them live with the consequences of it, right? The one hassle cities have is the fact that there are people around, whether it's guards or watchers or that kind of thing, right? Even in a den of thieves, a city that's criminalized, there are going to be criminal factions that are watching out, right? They don't want, some criminal organizations don't want chaos, and they might be looking out for the players, and they might see them doing some illicit activities and they'll go, okay, we're watching you, we see you, we're going to handle this later on. But that creates tension, right? The guards are coming. They're going to be here in 5 rounds. You better run for it, right? Or you look over you see the feathered crests on the helmets of the guards across the open courtyard in this large crowd. What do? And they know that if they, the barbarians sure can dish out a lot of damage, but it might be more important for everybody to make a run for it, or go hide, or convince the crowd to help them out and whatnot. Azala says a surprise hamstringing by a rogue halfling. Pretty nasty, right? And remember, in a crowd, some of the smaller races, they can slip through people's legs, kind of pass through the difficult terrain, if you will, by making certain, maybe acrobatics is used for it, or athletics or something like that, whatever it may be, or whatever you want to use. Dante says, for difficult terrain, allowing alternate checks to acrobatics allowed players to I guess saying like extricate themselves. They can try diplomacy or intimidate checks for the same effects, to express themselves. And Azal says, yeah, I love the idea of alternate checks. Absolutely. You don't need to, there's no need to go, there's only a dex save, or there's only a strength check. And since let's flow. Well, first of all, the alternate check thing allows your players to be creative. So maybe in your mind, you're like, listen, the crowd is so thick, they're listening to, I don't know, a religious, Bible thumper or something, and there's a crowd of people around, and then they say, well, can I use my dex or my acrobatics to maneuver around it or through it? And you go, yeah, sure, why not? Someone says, well, my character is very charismatic. I'm just going to say nice things. I'm going to give compliments and tap someone on the shoulder, the opposite shoulder, and slip past people. Yeah, absolutely do that. Maybe drop some coin into the coffer of the musician, and everyone's like, oh, really nice. And they start clapping a little bit, like, oh, you did a nice thing. So they don't say anything when you rush through the crowd, right? Or maybe even say some kind words to someone, or you say something that elicits anger, to have their anger directed at someone else. Right? Hey, that guy said you look stupid. That guy touched your significant other's ass. What I mean? That kind of thing. Nephrite says, nothing more deadly than a pixie in a mosh pit. That'd be funny. Dante says, Jesus makes a reputation check. Crowd parts like the Red Sea. And pretty good alternate use of parting the water spell, right? I don't even know if that even exists anymore. I think it was back. It was still in a first and second edition, but yeah, I think they got rid of that. That's a little too close, a little too on the nose. But okay, so but we've talked about crowds, but there's a hell of a lot of other things in cities that we can use. First of all, something else that I bring up a hell of a lot, because I am your self-appointed third pillarist, is the fact that weather, if your city, Azala brought this up earlier, if it's a desert city, a city in the Arctic, a city going through, maybe you have all 4 seasons, right? So you could have torrential rain, you could have mudslides, you can have flooding, all of these things. You could have fog early in the morning. So you can add all of those things into your city as well. And let's not forget, cities don't need to be on a flat plane. You can have a hill that's slippery with cobblestones. You can have a set of stairs that have colorful mosaics in the steps or something, and the players have to navigate their horses or mounts up and down the steps when you're having a chase or what have you. You can have very narrow alleys where your long weapons can't be spun around. Maybe you can hold your pike out straight, but maybe, going down a tight pass may be hard to do shoulder to shoulder. Maybe you can only fit one person down at a time. So you can add all of those other things. Maybe the torrential rain gives everyone, here I go again with 5th edition, resistance to fire out in the torrential rain. And sorry, Pyromancer, I know I'm picking on you, but that could be a thing, right? Where if you live in an Arctic place, maybe there's a lot of snow and there's, it's a blizzard gets to move in. Again, with the foreshadowing, when the players come into town, there's dark clouds on the horizon. When they go into the tavern, someone in the tavern is like, my knee is affecting me again. There's a storm coming in a couple of days or whatnot, right? So you foreshadow that event. Foreshadow the event, it comes through, here comes the blizzard. They can't see very far. And I've even brought this up before. There are a number of spells that specifically say targets you can see. Things like healing spells, things that help your allies and whatnot, or target your enemies. I even think like a magic missile can't even hit someone unless you can see them. So if there's a blizzard or fog, who knows what might happen? Dante brings up fog. It adds a lot of atmosphere. Yeah. Here we go with the dry humor again. I hear you. Azala says you can have all of them in a short period of time. A wizard is messing with the weather. It'll destroy the city if he's not stopped. Snowfall one day, hurricane the next, heat wave after that. Hey, that would be kind of cool. Like you could call the adventure Rise of the Chaos Moon or something like that, where you have all of these things happening over and over again, and people are like the people leave the streets because they're locked away because they don't know what the hell's happening. But you could have rock slides and mud and heat waves and fog and hurricane winds and all that kind of stuff. Even a dam breaks and then the city gets flooded in the horizontal method, the dead man's horizontal flooding as opposed to the vertical flooding, right? All of those things could happen in and around your city without needing to sorry, the chat went away for some reason. There we go. Okay, without needing to sell it to your players, or whatever the case may be. But we also have man-made obstacles as well, right? Nephrite brings up a local industrialist gnome collective is pouring pollution into the skies, bringing major environmental disaster. but it could be a threat, right? No one's to say that like an arcanist causes problems and then's like, well, if you want this to go away, gonna have to pay our guild or pay me to get rid of it, right? Or druids outside the city are like, oh, you're encroaching into my world. Fine, I'm gonna let the elements run free and have earthquakes and storm surges if they're by the sea and hurricane winds knocking things over. But we also have man-made obstructions as well. I'm talking about you, fruit cart, right? The cart of fruit that gets in the way, the barrels of ale that someone can dump over. Maybe an enemy dumps it into the player's path and it rolls down the hill, or one of the PCs is like, is that a barrel of oil? I'm going to shoot it with a flaming arrow and have it explode. There's tapestries. My cabbages. Yeah, exactly. Right. Don't touch those cabbages, but you could pick them up and throw them. The marketplace that has visual cover but not physical cover, right? So you could have cooking fires and smoke from, people cooking things in the marketplace, plus tapestries and clothing hanging. And if someone just ducks behind yet another silk, uh, silk tent or whatever, it could be a visual hazard. But someone maybe with that arrow, right? Here comes the archer again. Maybe closes his eyes and then like targets and fires through one of the tapestries to hit someone in the throat or what have you. So you could have man-made obstacles as well. And it could just be natural. Maybe there's a fountain or statues or construction equipment or anything. Yeah, Nephrite says, "Cue 1970s action movie car chase." Of course, it doesn't have to be medieval, right? It's the chasing up and down the streets. It's the riding on the wagon and jumping from one horse to another and being dragged along by grabbing onto a rope while you're being dragged around the corner. It's the body flop on top of the hood of the car while the enemy like tries to knock you off, turning left and right again. It's the bomb in the back of the army truck in World War II that you have to try to, keep from going off or something. And you grab a motorcycle because you have to have a sports car motorcycle, right? Because you're a hero. You get on that and you're speeding down the street and you're going the wrong way and all that stuff in the city. But let's move on. Okay, so let's go into Assassin's Creed. Oh, Nephrite says, roads strewn with upturned carts, people leaping away, banners and canopies falling from shops. And that's another thing too. The environment should be used, and I always end this with used and abused, right? So even if you're going to do the typical, well, it's difficult terrain, which we can get a little more creative than just typical difficult terrain. We could have things where you need to make an athletics check to climb over top of it, but that stuff can be moved, used, and abused. So an enemy could knock down one of those tents in the marketplace to make a barrier between themselves and the players that they have to navigate around it or over top of it or straight through it, right? You can have someone push the fruit cart inside in front of someone's way. If the PCs are running, they can knock over the barrel of ale or acid or oil or powder or whatever the hell it may be. You can have the PCs go into a warehouse and knock over a stack of warehouse. What are they? I don't know. My brain just farted. Crates. Geez, wow. Knock over a stack of crates to pin someone down, and then of course again reskinning, right? Even if you don't want to you can use the rules that already exist in your game system to create it. Hey, if you knock down this stack of crates, it takes a strength roll to do it, and if you do it, it's like let me flip through the book. It is collapsing ceiling, it's falling stones or something, right? You can create that. It's I'm going to use this as a whole monster or something. Like you could just pick something in the book and just use it, right? Use it as your reskin, whatever the hell it might be. We can maneuver ourselves inside of locations to even go for that. Nephrite said, I'm sorry, named by the namer, flying carpet through a cave of wonders, falling apart because your monkey is touching things it shouldn't. I think you're referring to something quite specific. But yeah, you can. So if we maneuver ourselves from outside to inside, we have fun with things inside. Clock towers, warehouses, I don't know, foundries and forges. We can play with a ton of those things. Warehouses are a very common thing, right? People running over the rooftops with maybe skylights and then falling through skylights. We have catwalks. We have ourselves like just. I guess my point is, let's not make our urban adventures bland, or let's not have our PCs encounter our NPCs and our big bad guys in a behind a green screen. And when I say green screen, it's sure we've described the background, but you could change the green screen to anything and it won't have any effect. I'm saying let's make it not green screen, but let's bring it into what we're messing with. Dante brings up feng shui mechanics about players saying what's in the environment worked very well for me running Eberron. Yeah, absolutely. And I get it that some people were like, well, if you start letting players get away with knocking over crates and setting fires and drowning people on the docks and all that kind of stuff, like if you let them do that, they'll do it all the time. And I'm thinking, sure, if those exact same parameters always exist all the time, right? You can grab some dice, grab a D6 and go, okay, roll the D6, 3 stacks of crates that you can knock over, and that's it. You can make it random. You can just pick and go, listen, you can knock over a sack of powder, flour once to try to blind them, but they've already seen it after you've done it once. It's not going to work on them again, right? I'm going to throw sand in their face once, so have fun with it. But the idea that the players could abuse it over and over again, I think is a fear of not doing it. As opposed to letting it get out of hand. Azala says, don't tell your players no, just say you can try. And again, you can try, right? You can try to do this thing. Or 5th edition has a very simple thing, advantage, disadvantage, that you can absolutely default into. If you have another game, there's like Banes and Boons, I think uses another game. There's bennies in many games like Fate or whatever. Hand out some bennies to people. You already have a mechanic for it, then use it. If you don't have a mechanic for it, find one that already exists and then use that. If you don't know the mechanics for Blizzard, offer disadvantage for people being able to see. If you do want to use even harsher mechanics for it, look up a spell that's very similar to it and go flip, flip, flip. Ice Storm, I'll use that. You can do those things and don't be afraid to do them and foreshadow that you're going to do it. So your players are like, oh, okay. And then let your players be experts. Hey, rogue, the back alleys of this place. You could pull down the tapestries to knock down the tent so it could be a barrier for them chasing you. And you're like, oh, I didn't think about that. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull out my scimitar and slice through the ropes that are holding the tent and see if it falls down. And then again, like Azal says, don't say no. Say, all right, you can try. I think that difficulty should make it a DC 12. Right? Yeah, you know what you're doing. It's kind of difficult, but I mean, you've probably even seen people do this before. It's DC 15. It's going to be real difficult. They're right on your tail or something. It's DC 20. The Royals set up these tents not to fall down. It's not going to be as easy as just slicing through the ropes. You can set up those things and PCs, players, don't fight with your GMs when you do this. But okay, so we've gone outside. We've been in the sewers. We've been outside. We've been inside of a building. Oh, I brought up forges and foundries. You play forges, foundries, factories, clock towers. You can set up your complex traps in those areas. For example, in a foundry, maybe you have molten ore that's being carried above the players' heads, and it starts to pour the molten ore into the molds. And every couple of rounds, you have to watch out for your clothes being grabbed inside of a gear, or pushing someone's face into an oven, or the forge is going and it's super hot and everything. And you take the NPC's arm and you slam their arm into the grate and burn their hand or whatever. Maybe there's something like a mill that's like grinding away at the dry corn or wheat or what have you, and you trap someone's leg or their wrist underneath it and it crushes it or whatever. Or maybe your cloak gets snatched up inside of the gears, and you have 3 rounds to either snatch your cloak off, and you love that cloak because it's like a cloak of flying or a cloak of the bat, and you love that thing, or you might get pulled into it, and the dwarven beard gets pulled into the gears, and they get pulled into the air by the thing. Or maybe there's like a big pounding machine that's like a big giant 5-ton rock that the dwarves created, and it's just pounding away at something, and you're fighting on a conveyor belt and punching each other, and the gun falls down, and or the sword falls out of someone's hand, and it's about to fall into the forge, and you got to snatch it before it goes away. Or it could be the MacGuffin, right? The key, the amulet, the secret formula, the antidote for the disease or poison or something. Like, you can go for all those things and have again, create timers for those things happening. You could make up a list of possible hazards in this location, and every round everyone has to make a roll as to whether they're going to be affected by it or not, or dodge away from it. There could be swinging arms and things moving horizontally and vertically, right, around the room, and they could be their hazards of their own selves, especially if it's very mechanical. Let's go to, what is the movie, Terminator 2, where they're fighting the T-2000, you know, and all the hazards about that. You're up in the catwalks and you're having a fight on a narrow space. And remember all the people that complain about the shove maneuver? Well, if you just push someone in 5th edition and knock them down, they just get up the next round. Yeah, but what about the situation, right? If you're on a catwalk and you shove someone 5 feet over the edge, they might fall into a molten ore or something, or into a pit, or into metal gears that are grinding away for a recycling plant or something, or an Atiag that's down in the in the recycling plant, right? So you can have a lot of fun and not be afraid of using those things. But okay, we absolutely positively have to go to Assassin's Creed. Roof running, free running, parkour, all of that stuff, right? We absolutely positively want to have a roof run chase. There's nothing more fun than a roof run chase, right? I don't know how many of you have seen, Blade, or Desperado, or any of the videos that have been the videos that have been made about the Assassin's Creed guys, live action stunt people doing the Assassin's Creed stunts, dressed as Assassin's Creed and like running through crowds and jumping over everything. How cool is that? So again, how can I explain this? If you want to mimic the Assassin's Creed thing, I feel like you don't really need to change the rules. I think we need to change ourselves narratively. So if someone has acrobatics, maybe you say, if you have the acrobatics skill, you can do those things. Or you can say, well, you have to have acrobatics at least a +3 or higher. Or you might say, combination of your dex and acrobatics, you have to have a bonus of like +5, or you have to have a minimum dex of 13, or whatever the case might be. You might just go, I don't even care. All you guys, as long as you make your rolls, you're doing all this crap, right? You're dive rolling, you're tumbling, you're jumping, you're flipping. And I think it behooves us not to describe things that way. Now, I get it. You're in plate mail and chainmail, doesn't really make much sense to do it that way in medieval places. But even in as we start to move towards modern day, we can just describe ourselves, running across narrow rooftops, jumping down to another area, climbing up another thing, doing the Jackie Chan, bouncing between, the fence and the wall, and then scooting ourselves over top of an obstacle or something, and then diving down and making a tumble roll. You can even institute a rule in your own game and go, listen, if you make an acrobatics check, any damage you take from a fall is halved, right? Or you could, we all know Dungeons and Dragons, monks have the ability to fall from certain heights and not take damage. It doesn't have to be like, that doesn't make sense how monks can fall that way. We've seen real life versions of people jumping down 25, 30 feet and tumble rolling and getting up and getting out of the way, right? Or their arms and legs stopping themselves slowly by grabbing onto different outcrops with their fingertips. So that could be the thing. Named by a Namer says Clockwork City, where the streets are pathways, or the city shape change depending on the time of day. I don't know where I've seen this image, and I know you guys can tell me. There's an image of, I believe it's one of the outer planes, like the lawful neutral plane, that was literally the entire plane. Cities are made on clockwork gears, and they move and interlink each other in different manners and stuff, you could absolutely have a Clockwork City where high noon, the street looks one way, and then when you come back, it's actually moved and changed around. That would be sweet. Buildings move, doors shift places, and the people that live there are just like, nah, it's gnomes are just like, whatever, it's no big deal. But that would be sweet. Dante says heavy characters can chase along in the street level, shooting up with ranged weapons in support. Of course, we've seen that many times in our movie tropes, right? One person running along the edge of narrow rooftops, the guards chasing them like, go left, go right, go down the alleyway, trying to shoot up at the people. Gonzalez says acrobatics check. The result is how many more feet you can fall and not take damage. That's perfect. You could even do when you roll the D20, that's how much damage is subtracted. That's how much damage protection you have from falling. So if you roll a 13, you subtract 13 from any damage you take from falling. You could and just make that a rule. Just go, hey guys, listen, we're going to do an Assassin's Creed type of game. Guys, if you make an acrobatics roll, whatever you roll, that's subtracted from any damage you take when you fall. That's it. Just and make that for everybody. Maybe even a ton of the enemies too. Tesla Ranger says Dark City. I remember that movie. Dark City. The city changes every night, but you don't remember the changes. Yeah, but that would be sweet for a city to have that too. But even when roof running, you have your acrobatics check to an athletics check to jump across expanses, jumping from one place to another. Of course, we've seen that in The Bourne Identity. We've seen that in B13 and B13 Part 2. We've seen that in The Raid Part 1 and Part 2, that kind of stuff. Mechanus, your Pocket GM says Mechanus is the clockwork plane, lawful neutral. Yeah, and I remember just seeing that image of like giant cities, and some of them are not gravitationally on the same plane, but they're all with gears intermeshed. Whatever, you guys know what I'm talking about. But we can also with roof running, you can have narrow ledges. So if you have to stay on a narrow path because you might fall off, you can have the classic, I'm going to take a ladder and stretch it across an alleyway and then walk across, or like crawl across a ladder, but then there might be enemies below you shooting up at you, or the distance, you might be 6 stories in the air, 60 feet or more, and you have to go across the ladder. You might jump from balcony to balcony, trying to climb up or down a balcony. You can, of course, have the I'm going to tackle the bad guy through the glass window and fall into the swimming pool down below. You could do there's a trash dump below me. So it's the jump out the window and land into the trash heap. It's the hand grab and draw your legs over the fence in the alleyway, kind of run and jump kind of thing as well. Your Pocket GM. So roof running and mechanics, huh? Hope you don't run out of time. Wink, wink. Yeah. Do. So, but yeah, you can have a lot of fun with that, and then create little hazards thereof. So you might have to. You're roof running, you have to jump down. So jumping down might need an acrobatics check. Maybe you get to a roof where you have to jump up or climb up. So do you take the fire escape up, or do you try to just do hand over hand and climb up? One might get you there faster, but it's harder to do. One might be slower, but you don't, there's no fear of twisting an ankle or something like that. If you're running across a narrow ledge, maybe the narrow ledge can get you past someplace because the guards really are not that acrobatic, but you're in a limited space. So it might be easier to attack you while you're trying to balance across the rope or the cables or whatever it is to get from one place to another. There might be abandoned buildings, and there might be a chance that walking across the roof might collapse. There might be a burning building, and it might have smoke and fire, and the smoke is a breathing hazard. It might knock you out. It might drain your constitution. It might cause exhaustion. You could also have the visual portions of smoke and fire with a burning building, and so you can't see through the smoke and navigate. And then you have the chance that the rooftops or the the walkways or the floors inside of the building might collapse as you're going through it. It might just be just an abandoned building itself, not on fire, but it could be condemned. And so having a fight over top of the glass skylight might not be a good thing if two or more people are having their fist fight or get tackled into, or I'm going to use my, again, shove maneuver to shove someone over a skylight so that they fall down, right? Or kick them over the edge kick the more powerful enemy off of the edge of the roof with that shove maneuver again, so that they fall, giving you a 30-foot, 60-foot distance. Now they've got to climb their way back up. Might be an easy way to target practice them. Maybe they're trying to climb up or come up a fire escape or something like that. And again, here I am saying that let's not do it on a flat plane. Let's make things interesting and stuff. So cities, Third Pillar Thursday. This is my passion. It's what I write about. It's what I'm into. Your Pocket GM says, I prefer my chases in a favela, a shanty, stacked apartment homes in Brazil. Yeah, shanty homes. So you can run through kitchens, bedrooms, bathrooms, just to make things amusing. You have to have the people run through. The PCs have to run through the family having dinner, the person in the bath, the couple doing the nasty, right? I mean, you can have all of those things happen. The Jason Bourne taking what was it? 5 seconds of, I'm going to pull the gas line. I'm going to take a magazine. I'm going to fold it up, stick it into a toaster. I'm going to push the toaster down, and I'm going to walk out the building, right? We all know what happens at that point. I'm going to take the stove, turn up the heat, get the hell out of there. Even if it's medieval times, there's a pot of something brewing in the alcove. I'm going to, I don't know, spill oil, the lantern oil all around the room, and then draw it straight up into the fire. And then all of a sudden the whole thing sets on fire as you run away from the enemies. I mean, letting people use and abuse the environment. And if your players don't do it, you do it as a GM. Let your enemies use and abuse the environment. Let them tackle one of the PCs over the edge of a rooftop. Let your enemies set fire to an abandoned building. Have your enemies tackle another PC through a skylight. Have your enemies try to put a ladder across an alley and try to scoot their way across, even though one or more of them might die in the attempt, but let them do it. Azala says, throw them for a loop and have them go from happily married, then next door is some organ harvesters. Yeah, that's where all those kidneys go. But I mean, yeah, you could have fun with it. And of course, this entire time that we're talking, flavor your city the way you want the flavor of your city to go. If we're talking deep and dark and gritty, what Azala says, by having organ harvesters, whether it's like cyberpunk or just a dark medieval city where people are just criminals, have those people in the background doing things. Maybe the PCs bust into a drug dealer's den and they all go for their weapons, and the PCs are like, shit, I didn't want to expect this. I'm going out the window. That kind of thing, right? Let that happen and let them experience your world through encountering your environment and describing the world of your environment through the things that they bump into, whether it's the graffiti, whether it's the language, whether it's what the people are doing. Just use that to really flavor what it is that your world is about, whether it's fun action, whether it's dark and gritty, or what have you. So Azala says, but if they're chasing a bad guy and run to a really bad guy, I'll give them pause to think if they should keep up the chase or give up and stop the organ leggers or kidnappers or what have you. And that's a good thing too. Like, you could even seed the chase might be minor, right? You could even start your adventure that way. All right, guys, you guys are chasing after this criminal, or you're running from the authorities. Just start the game out that way. You're running, and then tell your players, listen, why are you guys running from the authorities? Ask them. We're starting the game out. It's dark and gritty. This is the game we're playing. We all agree to it. Okay, the guards are trying to surround you. You're running down a back alley. You can see that there's a a fence at the end of it. You're pretty sure you can jump over top of it. There's a scaffolding that you can climb into. Oh, and there's a building on the north side of the alleyway. What do you want to do? And then have your players just listen, tell me why you're running. And one of the players might be a paladin. And they go, I'm running from the city guard because I've been accused of a crime I didn't commit. Oh, okay. You're like, no, not a crime. I have a secret identity and I'm here in the city, but the city guard is corrupt and they're going to arrest me anyway. That's cool. You're like, no. There's my paladin's order is illegal. They're not wanted in the city, and I'm running from them, and that's why I'm running with the other guys in my group. Like, okay, cool, that's great. All right, Rogue, why are you doing it? And Rogue's like, why do you think I stole something? I killed somebody. Cool, okay. How about you, Wizard? You know, he helped me steal a book. Cool. Okay, he stole a book. Okay, let me write that note. Maybe we'll figure out what's in the book later on. All right, we're starting the game. You could absolutely do that. So my suggestion is absolutely positively don't make your cities boring. Have fun with it. Have chases. I know chases chases in RPGs are not a muscle, a mental muscle that we flex a lot. Sometimes it can even atrophy, but go for it. Every time someone turns a corner in the city, there can be something new. Every time they go up a set of stairs, every time they go through a back alley, every time they go into a crowd, you can make something new and different. I know there's lots of people around in some of these cities, but based on the time, the weather, whether people are locked away from a storm, whether it's nighttime, it's midnight and everyone goes home and it's dark and you can't, whatever the case may be, you can still manipulate things. Like we even talked about arcane cities or even high-tech cities where you might have ghosts that patrol, you might have lycanthropes or vampires that are in the city, dark beings that patrol around because people close the doors at night. You can have those kind of things as well. Azala says it gets difficult when you have the character going, but my speed is 40. I outrun them. If you want to make it boring, yes. Well, my speed is 40 and theirs is 30, so I should outrun them. In a vacuum, sure. If you are not going to include the narrative of having things in and around them, then yes. If there are no barriers, if there's no obstacles, if they don't have to maneuver through a crowd, if they don't have to maneuver through trash in an alleyway, if they don't have to maneuver through the marketplace, yes, the person with a speed of 40 will outrun this person with a speed of 30. But I would say you've got advantage to outrun someone. If you got a speed of 40, you have this speed advantage, capital A, to outrun the guards who have a speed of 30, right? But that doesn't mean that both of them don't make athletics checks or acrobatics checks, because the fastest person is going to hit the obstacle first and could bump into someone, trip and fall, slip on the cobblestones in the rain. They could trip over the stack of barrels when they barrel around the corner, or trip over the construction materials when they barrel around the corner, or when they speed around the corner, trip over the barrels of ale or something, right? It's the let's look past the simple and make it complicated and make it an obstacle, make it a complication in the purest sense, because on a flat plane with nothing there in a vacuum, sure, numbers don't matter. You know, the bigger number beats the smaller number every time, but in a chase, the fastest person has advantage, so give them advantage. They get to roll twice and take the higher number. So sure, they'll probably outrun the guards, but they also might trip and fall, or there might be, I don't know, they run past horses or animals or something that become enraged or panicked when they come by, and that might be a thing. Azala says, of course, quote, my speed is 40, I win. And says, yeah, but you're a wizard with -1 con. The street is dirty and crowded. You've got long robes on. Yeah, exactly. I mean, as long as we don't, how can I say this? You want your players to be the experts that they are. The person with a speed of 40 plus is the faster person, right? So you don't want to hamstring them, but you want to make a challenge for them, right? So you don't want to say, yeah, and I'm not pointing you out is all I'm saying. You're bringing up the point of, sure, but you have a con, your con is -1, right? So the thing is, you want to create a challenge. So yeah, you're the faster person, but you don't have the greatest endurance, right? With your with your negative in your constitution, and the guards are used to chasing people down, you only have so many rounds before you start having to make rolls for exhaustion or something, right? Or sure, you can outrun them, but maybe it's better if you find a place to hide instead. Oh, that's right. Yeah, I'll turn a corner and try to snatch a scarf and pretend I'm in the crowd or something like that. That might be the better thing than running in a straight line to outrun them, right? Any number of things could happen. The guard could blow a whistle or ring a bell, and the crowd gets in your way. Hey, stop that thief. And they go, oh, stop that person. And someone moves a cart in your way. And now you have to make a roll to scoot underneath it or jump over top of it. Or now you have to make a left turn and you hit a dead end, because that was the whole point, to move the cart in front of you, to make you go down a dead end street so the guards can go after you. And again, complications, obstacles. How are you going to get out of it? Making things dynamic and having that tension, that die roll. The die roll is the meta version of creating that beating heart, that tension that I still might not get away. But at the same time, the PCs are the experts, right? They're the faster, smarter, backflipping, parkour, free running individuals who are basically better than your average person, and only by their failures and their mistakes and their choices do things start to compound more and more and more until they get caught doing what they're doing. So anyway, I'm DBJ. Thank you very much for joining me on our urban exploration. Today's Third Pillar Thursday. Tomorrow, we go into Future Friday, where we talk about future cities, habitats, space habitats, and all the nitty-gritty stuff. We can have fun with them, constructing them, coming up with environments for them. And then, of course, having the, radiation, gravity, all that kind of stuff that we can deal with, dome cities, space habitats, space elevators, all that kind of stuff. As Al says, we once had a chase scene and one guard kept rolling really well, so we made her an acrobat parkour expert. Exactly. Hey, that may happen, that unnamed NPC might just become pretty important. So anyway, guys, thank you very much for joining me. I am DBJ, and just as a side note, I have to thank Mythos for pointing out the fact and being very kind to me that yes, there is a super chat function. So that's just my little plug for that. Plug. All right, guys, have a very good one. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for joining me. See ya.